Hi everyone, I'm Mikey from University Centre Askham Bryan, and in this video we're going to talk about all things student finance. So what are the costs to higher education and what help and support is available to you. So student finance and student loans has been in the news for quite a few years now, and it can be quite confusing. There's figures about how much you pay, there's talk about debt. So in this video, we're hopefully going to clarify a few things and answer some of the questions that you, your parents and guardians might have about what does it look like and is higher education an option for me. At the end of the video, hopefully you'll take this away. There's so much support available to you that finance shouldn't be a barrier to succeeding and going on to higher education if you wish. There's so much support through the loan system and also scholarships and bursaries as well. So if there's one thing that you take away, there's so much support available to you. So if we look at the costs to higher education, there are two main costs to studying at university and HE. The first one is tuition fees, so tuition costs. This is costs related to teaching and learning, so the costs of the lecturers and tutors, but also use of facilities, so things like the library paying for books and subscriptions, and also maybe labs and practicals paying for the materials to go with that. Now everyone's entitled to a loan to pay for their tuition fees for their first degree, and this would be through the tuition fee loan. The second cost is living costs. So this would be costs with your bills, rent, clothes, food, that sort of thing. And again, everyone can get a loan to help with this. This would be the maintenance loan, and everyone's entitled to at least something. You can apply to the Student Loans Company to have your household income assessed to see whether you could get a little bit more to help with these costs. And we'll come on to that sort of system in a little bit. But if we look at the tuition fee and the tuition fee loan first, there's two options for paying for your tuition fees. First one is that you can pay the fee yourself. Most institutions allow you to do this, and you can do this before enrolment, so before you get there, or in 3 instalments, maybe before each term. That's an option if you fancy it. Or you can take out a tuition fee loan. And this is what most eligible students in the UK opt for. This is what I did myself when I went to university, just like thousands of other students. Now, all eligible UK and currently EU students are eligible for a full tuition fee loan regardless of their income. And this loan will pay for the full tuition fee that is set by and paid directly to the provider. So you can see in the top corner that at University Centre Askham Bryan, we charge £9,000 per year for a full-time course and £4,500 per year for a part-time course. Now institutions in the UK can charge up to £9,250. Now this tuition fee loan goes directly to the provider, so it won't go into your bank account. You don't need to worry about keeping your tuition fee loan separate to your maintenance loan. It's all sorted by the Students' Loan Company, so they'll pay the provider, your college or university, on your behalf. This loan is subject to interest at a rate set by the government. It's important to mention, but it doesn't really affect how much you repay month to month because that's a separate system, and we'll come on to repayment in a little bit because it is quite an important part of why the student loan system is very different to any other loan you may take. So that's the tuition fee and the tuition fee loan. The other cost I mentioned was living costs. And most students will get a maintenance loan to help with this. And as I mentioned before, this is sort of your day-to-day essentials, just your cost of living. Now, all students are eligible for something, a minimum amount, but you can apply to the Students' Loan Company to have your household income assessed to see whether you're eligible for any more. Your household income, all that means is how much do whoever you live with, your parent, guardians, whoever, how much is coming into the household, and you can get that assessed to determine how much more you might be able to get. For information, you can see some amounts here. So if you're applying for 2020 entry and living with parents or guardians, so if you were living at home, the maximum you could get would be £7,747 if you got the household income assessed. If you lived away from home and got your household income assessed, and so if you lived in private accommodation or in halls of residence, the maximum you could get would be £9,203. And then if you chose to live away from home in London, you could get up to £12,010 to take into account the increased cost of living in London. Now these are paid directly to your bank account, so this is normally before each term in 3 instalments, and so you'd have to learn to budget and sort of manage your money to help spread that over how long your term and holidays are. So I mentioned it's a sliding scale. Is if you got your household income assessed. So you can see at the top, if your household income was under £25,000, the maximum that you could get if you were living at home would be £7,747. In the same column, if you go down, so as your household income increases, the amount that you'd be eligible for would decrease, as there's an assumption that whoever you live with would make a contribution. And as you can see, that's the home amount. So if you were a commuting student and living at home and then going in potentially every day. If you lived elsewhere, so in private accommodation, in halls, you get a little bit more, and then in London, even more. This is just an illustration of how it works. So the more the household income, the less of the loan that you get, and vice versa. You can work out how much you are eligible for through the student finance calculator. It's important to mention that the help and support doesn't just stop at the maintenance loan. There's so many bursaries and scholarships available, and some of them are listed there. So Care Leavers bursary, we ourselves, the University Centre of Askham Bryan, we have a bursary, and there's also scholarships as well. And this is free money. This is money that doesn't need to be paid back at all. And this would be on top of a maintenance loan. So it's definitely worth checking either on the government website or with the providers and institutions that you're applying for to see whether you'd be eligible for even more money to help you out with the costs of higher education. So just to recap, we've got our tuition fee loan to pay for the tuition fees and the cost of teaching and learning at the institution, plus the maintenance loan to help with living costs, rent, bills, food, that sort of thing. This together makes the student loan. So whenever you hear someone say the student loan company, that sort of thing, it means those two loans together make one loan, essentially. Now this loan, together the student loan, is repaid only once you're earning over a certain amount. And currently this threshold is £26,575 a year. So you start paying back your student loan when you're earning over that. If you don't earn that, you don't pay anything back. So that brings us on to repayment in a little bit more detail. So what do I mean by this threshold? So you'll start paying, as I mentioned, when you're earning over £26,575 currently. And you'll be up for paying your student loan the April after you finish your course. So you don't start paying straight away. It's a little bit, maybe just under a year since graduation, that you'd be up for paying your student loan. It's important to mention that you'd still have to pay your student loan even if you move abroad. You'd have to tell the student's loan company that you've moved abroad and you come up with an arrangement there. So it's not good enough to think, oh, I'll get a loan out and then hop over abroad. You still need to pay, which is important to mention. So if you earn over the threshold, you start paying back a little percentage of how much you earn. If you fall under that threshold, if you don't earn £26,575 a year, then you don't pay back. Your repayments stop. If you never earn over that amount, you never pay back your student loan. If you're out of employment for a little bit and you earn under that, then your repayments just pause for a bit until you're back up. So it can stop and start depending on how much you earn. Now this is an important bit. The government will write off any unpaid balance after 30 years. So if you don't pay back your student loan after 30 years, the remaining balance is completely written off. You don't need to worry about it. It's all settled. After 30 years, you stop paying. And also, debt will never be transferred. So your student loan that you take out, it never goes back. Never goes to your family or whoever you live with. It is yours, and you can't pass it on to someone else. Now here's a figure to try and explain this repayment system a little bit more clearly. We've got that repayment threshold, £26,575. Let's take an example that you're earning £29,000. You'd be £2,425 over that threshold. Now graduates repay 9% of anything that they earn over the repayment threshold. So you'd repay 9% off £2,425. If we divide that by 12, you'd be looking at around £18.20 a month, which is less than my broadband currently. If we take another example and say that you're earning £27,000 a year, you'd be just under £500 a year over that threshold. So you'd pay 9% off that £500, which works out around £320 a month. And again, if you earn £30,000 a year, which is a fantastic salary for a graduate, if we do that maths again, 9% off anything over that threshold works out at around £25.70 a month. So it doesn't matter how much you borrow, what really matters is how much you're earning after graduation. This brings me on to this point. I hear this quite a lot when I'm talking to prospective students and parents at events, is if I borrow less, I'll repay my loan sooner and I won't be in debt. Well, we can take an example to look at this. So the average graduate starting salary is around £23,000 a year. Let's assume that this salary grows over time 5% a year, which is best case scenario really. And we assume that the starting household income, so when we're applying for student finance, is under £25,000 a year, and we've got inflation and repayment will be shown in today's money. So if we have a look at what that looks like, if I took out a tuition fee loan for 3 years at £9,000 a year, and then I chose to live away from home, that would be how much I take in student loan. If you look at how much I'd repay, over 30 years would pay £3,330, and the remaining balance would be wiped, as I mentioned before. After 30 years, it would be wiped. So out of that much, I'd repay a total of £3,030. If I wanted to save a little bit of money and chose to still go for 3 years but live at home, take out a little bit less loan, I'd repay £3,330 over 30 years, and the total would be wiped. You can kind of see where I'm going with this, hopefully. If I chose to change my degree and instead of doing a 3-year degree, I'd do a 2-year degree and live at home, so taking out quite a bit of a smaller loan in total, I'd repay £3,330 and the rest would be wiped after 30 years. And even if I went for 1 year and lived at home, the remainder would be the same. So it really highlights the repayment doesn't depend on how much you borrow. So it doesn't matter whether you go for 3 years or 1 year, if you live at home or go away. What matters in terms of repayment is how much you earn after graduation. That determines how much you pay back, not how much you borrow. So you're probably thinking, Mikey, that sounds fantastic. How do I go about getting student finance? So you apply for student finance after you've gone through UCAS. So you go through UCAS to choose your provider and your course, and you send that form off, and then after that you choose, you go through the student finance system. And there's no need to have a confirmed place to apply for student finance. So even if you haven't made your decisions, you can still apply for student finance. And we'd encourage you to do that and get it in as early as possible. So this is what the system looks like on the gov.uk website. And the deadline for applying is normally the end of May for September funding. And so if you want funding ready before you start your course, you need to apply by the May deadline. So always encourage that you apply early. So student finance will open in the February, the year that you're applying for and starting. And parents and guardians, whoever you live with, should be encouraged to share their financial information with the provider. All this means is that the university, college can see whether you're eligible for bursaries and scholarships, and makes that process a little bit easier than you having to sort out that paperwork yourself. You'd need to apply for student finance every year, but the Students' Loans Company will normally remind you by text and email, normally in the springtime of your first, second and third years, if you're going to continue. Quite topical, so there's been a few changes for 2020 entry with coronavirus, and so it's important to say that if your household income has dropped by 15% or more since the previous tax year, so 2018-19, you can request for this current year to be assessed. And so if whoever you lived with has been furloughed or been made redundant, that can be taken into account to show that there's been quite a significant drop in household income. And evidence can be sent later if you're self-isolating. So if you have got coronavirus, you don't need to worry about sending evidence and what the student loan company needs straight away. You can do that at a later date. And again, that's the website that you'd go through, gov.uk/student finance. And so you can see how much you might be able to get as well, and also apply in the end. So we put together a little quiz to kind of test your knowledge and see how much you know about the student finance system. So if you run your phone camera over that QR code or put that bit.ly link into a browser, you come up with a little quiz to test your knowledge about all things student finance and everything we've spoken about in this video. So some top tips from me. If you're in full-time study, it's really recommended to try and take some money with you if you can. When you first enrol at the provider, it might take student loan company maybe 3 to 5 days to make that first payment. So if you can take a few pounds to see you through that first days, that would be really useful. I'd also recommend to open a student bank account. Lots of these will come with added perks, such as the 1625 rail card, but also a lot of them will give you a interest-free overdraft, which can provide a bit of a safety net if you run into a little bit of difficulty during your time in higher education. Also, you could get some part-time work to top up your maintenance loan. If you're in a city, there's normally sort of cafes, bars, that sort of thing, restaurants. But also a lot of providers will provide work in the form of mentors or student ambassadors. So it's definitely worth having a look to see what's available to you. Having said that, try not to work too much. You are there to study and get a degree, so we normally recommend between 10 to 12 hours per week. Plan and budget. I mentioned before, your maintenance loan is normally paid in 3 instalments, normally before each term, and so that kind of has to last you. So it's really recommended to try and work out how much you're going to have incoming, how much are your outgoings, and see whether you can budget and plan accordingly. And finally, make the most of your student status. You're a student, and lots of shops, either on the high street, independents, or online, offer student discounts. So it's really recommended to make the most of them. So the final messages from me. Universities can charge up to £9,250 a year for your tuition fee, but everyone's entitled to a tuition fee loan, and so there's no upfront costs for you to start university or higher education. The repayment of the student loan will start when you're earning over £26,500 a year, that threshold figure. So if you're earning over that, you'd pay a percentage, 9% of anything you're earning over that threshold. If you don't earn that much, you don't pay back at all. After 30 years, that loan is written off, so you don't have to worry about it. If it's not settled, it's all gone. There's bursaries and scholarships may be available as well, either from the government, so you can have a look on the gov.uk website, or by the providers and institution that you're applying for. So really recommend checking with them to see whether you can get anything. And finally, if you're still thinking about is it worth it, see it as an investment in yourself. If we're talking about money, graduates are more likely to earn more over their lifetime than people that don't go to university, than non-graduates. And so in the long term, it is an investment in yourself and your skills and experience. So if you're thinking about money, you could see it that way. So that's all from me in this video. If you've got any questions, please feel free to email me at inquiries@askham-bryan. And also there's a QR code and a link there for feedback. We really value your feedback, so we know what we're doing well, what we're not doing so well, and if this was helpful to you. Till next time, thank you, goodbye.